was born Janice Rosalie Hammond to Amy and George, her mother and father, on March 20th, 1947 in Kingsland, England. She was the youngest of 8 children and the baby of the family. She grew up in Norfolk, England with her immediate family, whom she loved very much. She was one of 3 children of the Hammond family to become an American transplant. In 1964, she married Jerry Granger, my grandpa, while he was serving in the United States Air Force, and soon they were stationed in America. They lived in Delaware, Virginia, Hawaii, Michigan, and California, and spent some time back in England as well. Janice had 3 children, my Aunt Donna, my mother Teresa, and my Aunt Geraldine. It's my understanding that they kept her quite busy growing up. Grandma was a wonderful English cook, the kind that had virtually no recipes, but just knew when things looked right. Stephen and I can attest to that, as we both recently struggled trying to grasp her Yorkshire pudding recipe. Measurements were more of an artful science than an exact thing that one could follow along to. Also, Matt has put out a request, or more a plea really, for someone that knows the carrot casserole recipe to please come forward. The measure of a true cook is how satisfied her family is. Needless to say, we were all satisfied. When Grandma wasn't busy rearing her children, taking care of her husband, Jerry, and the household, she spent time providing childcare out of her home, and working as a sales associate and manager for JCPenney. Grandma loved her work, both of her jobs. She loved people. She loved to be with people and to hear about them and share stories with them. She was a great storyteller. Grandma had a special soft spot for children, and so childcare was less a job and more a passion for her. In everything she did, my grandma captivated others and delighted them. As a surprising twist, given her thick British accent, she also enjoyed kicking back to the tunes of American country greats like Garth Brooks and Billy Ray Cyrus. As time went on, her life grew, as did her family. She has 7 grandchildren, myself, my sister, and my 5 cousins. And so far, the count on the great-grandchildren is 5, with 2 more on the way. She was not 2 in here. 1 in here, and one in California, so close to her due date she was not able to travel. She was exceptionally proud of her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. She spent almost every moment of her life talking about her family, thinking about her family, or doing things for her family. She lived for us. When she retired from her work and stayed home to take care of her husband and to spend time with her family. In May 2011, her husband, my grandpa, succumbed to Parkinson's disease and joined God in the kingdom of heaven. It was a sad time for Grandma and for our family. She spent the majority of her life moving around the world with her husband, and later in her life she devoted herself to nursing and caring for him. It was sad indeed, but it was also an opportunity for her. Having to no longer care for Grandpa, whose health had been failing, my grandma made the decision to move to Virginia, spend time with her East Coast bound family, and travel as much as she could. It was difficult for her to leave. It was difficult for her to leave her family in California, her 2 children, her grandchildren, and her great-grandchildren. She was only able to do so by promising herself and them that she would visit and return and to visit as much as she could. She did. She traveled to so many places in the past 3 years she spent based in Virginia. She went to California twice. She visited her sister Jill in West Virginia many times. And her sister Julie came and spent time with us from New York. Every year, Grandma traveled with my mom and dad for holidays to see family that came from all over together and be with one another. We have a large family. I know that she was thrilled to see and be reunited with her grandson, my cousin Matt, and his beautiful family on one particular trip to Tennessee, as Matt had moved from California quite a few years before. She also traveled to England to see her other siblings and cousins and family. During her last trip to England, she was even able to see her childhood village and visit the school she attended as a young girl. This was such a rich and fulfilling experience for her, and she truly enjoyed the freedom to travel. While good times outnumbered the bad, those 3 years were not without some struggle and strife. Grandma spent several months recovering and regaining strength after breaking her hip in 2011. She experienced many ups and downs in her health, and on June 29, 2013, she deeply mourned the loss of her oldest daughter, my Aunt Donna. Of all the trials and tribulations, she would tell you today that this was her hardest, as I think any parent can understand. There were indeed tests of Grandma's strength to which she persevered while allowing life to fill her up. I wanted to speak today because I'm grateful that she had the opportunities that she did in those last years. And that I had the chance to see the joy it brought to her. Growing up as a child, I spent many summers visiting my grandparents. When I was very young, we lived briefly with my grandma and grandpa. As time went on, we visited during the holidays, but as I grew up, as life took turns, the trips became fewer and far between. I found that I knew my grandma less and less. I am forever grateful for the last 3 years that I was able to spend with her, learn about her all over again, and become enchanted by her through my adulthood. My grandma was both a complicated and simple woman to understand. At the surface and to outsiders, she may have seemed complicated, but if you knew her like I did, like we did, you understood that her actions and her words were in response to an intense emotion she had and felt for others. Put simply, Grandma was tortured by the problems and hurt of other people. She felt deeply the pain and need of others, and she suffered with them. She internalized and absorbed people's burdens, people she loved, and anonymous people she had never met. In reflection, I'm reminded of an interaction I had with her just before she passed. She had received a chain email that she wanted to share with me. It was one of those chain emails that someone like me typically deletes. We all know the type. At the beginning, a long list of prior recipients to verify that this story has indeed traveled the world. And the body of an email is a written portrait of a sad, but mostly anonymous situation. A family in trouble, a kid who's sick, a father who's dying. At the end, a message of hope, a plea for prayers, or a request for something more tangible. I and so many others, I believe, delete those emails as a method of coping, or perhaps we're oversensitized to it. I think the rationale is I don't want to feel that hurt, so I'll simply delete it. And then it didn't happen, and we don't have to feel it. It's as easy as that for me and most others. But Grandma couldn't do that. She didn't even have the option. She felt the person's pain as though it was her own. She could not delete that email because it bore the words as if they were a black and white reminder of the indelible scars from a real person's said in an accent that I'm going to butcher, "Oh, Ashley, isn't that just awful?" And there was real pain in her face. It was awful, and she felt that in a way that the rest of us couldn't and didn't. She was the ultimate empathizer. It's no secret that my grandma did not take the best care of herself. Instead, she spent her life taking care of others in the ways that she knew how. To the ones she loved, she gave everything she had and could give to keep us from needing, to keep us from suffering, to keep us from hurting. That was her life. She loved her children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. She loved her family. With all of us, though, it was clear that Grandma was most in love with the smallest, most precious, the most defenseless of us, the babies, the children. She adored them, and they adored her. To my daughter, Isla, she wasn't just her great-grandmother. She was Gimme, a name which has an interesting origin that lies in her constantly wanting to give her everything. She was the woman that gave her the moon if she could. She would. The woman who spent countless hours doing countless silly things just to make her smile. And laugh a laugh that in Isla's case was particularly reserved for Gimme. A laugh that omits. I'm most comforted, yet saddened, when I think of those moments. Those moments that characterized my grandma. Most of all, I'm truly comforted knowing that Gimmy's heart and soul are now at peace. The peace she wanted so much for all of us. I know that she will watch over us and help us also find that peace. She is our angel now. My grandmother had an intense motivation to be needed, useful, and wanted. It didn't matter how much she was told that she was all of those things. It was her mission and purpose to always be those things. As I look around here and reflect on the countless many that have reached out to us and told us about all the lives she's touched all over the world, I'm reminded, and I always know, how important and needed she was. I believe she knows in a peaceful way just how missed she is. I also believe, as I tell my daughter, that Gimme is happy because she gets to be the angel she always wanted to be. And she's looking down on us, on all of us, and helping in the way that she's always wanted. Now, my cousin Connor